Hey everyone, hope you're doing well. It's good to have you guys in here. I'll just kind of kick things off, and the focus for this is as we kind of move into the new year. Goal setting and habit building and things like that are a really big part of generally that sort of forward planning. So hopefully, what we cover today will be useful for both you and your clients. So teaching you some techniques about how you can do that. But I think another application for this is also, it's a good time to maybe sit down and reflect about like what your goals are for yourself and your business for the coming year as well. So I think you can implement a lot of those strategies um, within yourself as well. So just keep that in mind as we move through. But we can probably kick things off now. If anyone else filters in, I'm sure they'll be able to catch up and or grab the recording. So starting things off, what are we going to cover today? So a couple of things. We're going to talk about some goal setting strategies. So we'll look at your role as a coach or a trainer in the goal setting strategy with your clients. We'll also look at finding that root cause, that real deep why, as not just like a surface level of like, oh, I want to lose weight. Like, yeah, cool, but like, what's that motivating factor that's driving you to make that change? We'll look at different types of goals. So we'll do SMART goals, which I'm sure a lot of you are pretty familiar with, but we'll do a quick recap of that. We'll look at short, mid, and long-term goals, and we'll look at outcome and process goals. And then we'll kind of have a look about how outcome and process goals and short, mid, and long-term goals kind of come together and work as one. We'll also look at habit formation strategies. So we'll look at ways to create new habits and remove old habits and reinforce them. And then we're also going to look at some Everfit tools for accountability and goal setting as well. So with that in mind, we'll jump into it. So first off, why does goal setting matter, right? So obviously it's one thing to just kind of have a general conversation, like, yeah, I want to achieve, A, B, and C. But as you can see here, some really powerful numbers in regards to things like writing your goal down, right? So a simple act of writing that goal down, whether that's the client writing it down on a piece of paper, sticking it on their wall, whether it's you adding that goal into the Everfit app so they can see that on a regular basis. But as you can see there by the number, a 10x chance of achieving the goal when it's written down, right? So that's a super easy way to get your clients set up and give them a 10 times the opportunity to actually achieve that goal simply by writing it down. The next one, as you can see, 70% increase in the success rate of goals when there's an accountability partner. Now, obviously, if you're working with a coach, particularly in a one-to-one or maybe a group coach setting, you are that accountability partner. So that's great. They've already got that like one accountability partner ticked off. But it's also worth noting that maybe having a second or even a third accountability partner for your client is really beneficial as well, right? So if it's their partner or a parent or whoever it might be, maybe have them look outside of just your relationship and find someone else that can be that accountability partner as well. And then going back to what I was saying before about being able to take some of these ideas for your own sake. If you have a business partner, great. That's probably someone that can hold you accountable. But also maybe look within your own network of like, who's somebody that can hold me accountable to some of these goals that I'm setting around my business, right? So maybe the goal is growth, and a part of that is you need to contact 10 leads a week, right? So find somebody that's going to hold you accountable to make sure that you do that. And then that final point there, 35% increase in success rate when big goals are broken down into smaller milestones. So that's going to really tie in when we cover those short, mid, and long-term goals in a couple of slides. But again, setting big, scary goals is great because it gives you something to strive for, but it can also be intimidating. So you want to make sure that you break those down into more manageable chunks. And like I said, we'll cover that in a little bit more detail in a few more slides. All right, so the goal setting process, what is your role as the coach? So first off, you want to really facilitate clarity of goals. So a lot of the time, a client may have a goal in mind. Again, maybe it's lose 20 kilos, or maybe they just know, hey, I'm overweight. My doctor told me I need to lose some weight. It's like, okay, great. that's a good place to start, but you want to help and provide them with focus and direction. So again, maybe tying back into the SMART goals, right? Make it specific, give them a number, give them a time frame. Plan out action steps to actually get there, which is that direction part of that benefit, right? So that's your goal there, is to take what they want to do, but then help create a plan around it. The other one, probably pretty straightforward, but you're a source of accountability, right? So the benefit to that is, one, there's someone that's going to hold them accountable to make sure that they do what they've committed to doing. But then also being able to measure that progress as well. That's going to be a big part of how you're going to play a role in this setting. So again, whether that's showing progress reports in Everfit, or having the client weigh in, even if that's not added into the app or anything, but just providing those ways to show that progress. So Matt, just saw your question there. So at the moment, I would probably, depending on what the goal is, of course, using the metrics tabs within Everfit can be great. You can potentially even, say it's a weight loss goal. I would look to maybe grab the metric chart of their weight over time, and then maybe pair it with the adherence of a habit, right? So if the habit is to meal prep, every week, right? And then I can show, look at these 6 weeks in a row where you meal prepped really well and you check that habit off, and look at the progress you made in your weight loss in that 6 weeks, versus maybe look at this 4 weeks where you didn't meal prep as well and maybe you didn't have it, right? So it's just trying to find correlations in there. We don't have anything specific that can generate a report for you just yet. That is something that we're discussing and looking to build out this year. That would be correct. Yeah, Matt, screenshotting the metrics, or live screen sharing, depending on how you interact and communicate with your client. Okay, so the third point here, being your role, is adaptability and empathy, right? So it's one thing to start out, sit down, create a goal, create a plan, but as we all know, that life gets in the way, right? So your job is often to help the client through those challenges. So by adaptability, it's like, oh, hey, like I'm getting slammed at work this week, or my kids are sick, or my kids are home from school, or whatever it might be, right? Like, all right, cool. Like, instead of trying to get to the gym for an hour each day this week, why don't we just drop in some 30-minute home workouts so you can fit in around the house or something like that, right? So allowing that adaptability to meet the client's needs. Now, obviously, that's probably more of like a high touch one-to-one style client. If that's like a group or an on-demand, maybe that's not a great use case, but the concept there of being able to provide options for a client is useful. And then that empathy side as well is, if a client says, again, comes to you and say, hey, look, my kids have been really sick. I haven't been able to get to the gym this week. Depending on the client, more often than not, scolding them for that's probably not going to get you very far, right? So you want to have that empathy and that support and be like, oh, I'm sorry to hear that. Let's find a solution, right? So it's just that empathy side of it. And then finally, probably one of the most enjoyable and successful parts of this is celebrating those wins, right? So it is really important, even if it's a small win, to celebrate it, to keep them engaged, keep them feeling good, and showing that progress. And that's, as you can see there, that's going to really drive confidence in both themselves that they can achieve the goal, but then also in you as a coach, right? If you can really be there to celebrate those wins, it's going to make them feel good and make them feel like they're getting value for money for what they're signing up for. All right, so let's take a look at some effective goal setting strategies. So I mentioned at the start, SMART goals. I haven't really put these on here, but in case you're unfamiliar with SMART goals, SMART is an acronym, stands for specific, measurable, attainable, I've gone blank right now, relevant, and time-based, right? So it's just 5 key factors of creating a well-rounded goal. But what I really want to look at here is the point of facilitating clarity and uncovering root cause. So in order to facilitate that clarity of what their goal is, you really need to be an active listener when the client's discussing their goals, right? So keep an eye or an ear out for little things they might say that are going to give you hints as to that underlying root cause of why they want to achieve the goal. A way to help with that is to ask probing questions. Now, we've got a couple of examples here on the right. And one of the ways to ask probing questions ties into the 5 whys technique. So basically, that's asking why to an answer 5 times to kind of get to that root cause. Now, it might not always require 5, but that's a general rule of thumb. So as you can see there in the image, if you ask a client, why do you want to lose weight? And they say, because I want to be healthier. You're like, yeah, sure, that makes sense. But like, that's a pretty surface level answer, right? So we want to go to that next level. So you're like, okay, well, why is being healthy important to you? Right? See what they say. In this example, obviously, as you can see on the screen, they say, well, I want to have more energy and feel better in my daily life. Like, all right, cool. Again, like now we're getting a little bit further in there. And again, it's, well, why do you want that? And then that is, oh, so I can keep up with my kids and be an active parent. All right, cool. Like, again, like really, really good that that's what you want, but why do you want to do that? So again, you just keep asking, keep probing, and trying to get to that really deep root cause. And then as you can see there, that final one, when they say, I want to have a good positive relationship with food and exercise. They want their children to have a good and positive relationship with food and exercise. Therefore, they want to set a healthy example, right? So it's like, okay, so this goes beyond just you wanting to lose a few kilos. This is talking about, theoretically, like generations of positive impact here, right? So now we're getting to really big causes. And then if they are in a moment, a few weeks into the program, something where they're starting to struggle, that's going to be something that you can bring up and be like, hey, like, I know you're struggling this week. I know you didn't get to the gym, but, trying to motivate them and be like, but remember, like, set that healthy example for your children, right? That's going to be a better motivating factor than being like, hey, remember you want to lose weight, right? So it's just about trying to find out what the root cause is so that you can help the client with motivation and consistency later on. Now, there's some other strategies as well for uncovering root cause, such as open-ended questions, and then also intrinsic versus extrinsic motivation. So again, quickly just to cover the intrinsic versus extrinsic motivation. If it's an intrinsic motivator, that's usually something that only affects you as the individual on the inside, right? So things like a sense of achievement, increased self-confidence, or general improved health and well-being, right? So if a client goes and does an exercise program and their blood pressure drops into a healthy range, that's really, really good. That's a positive effect. That's probably not something that has a huge extrinsic motivator. It doesn't really affect that many people around you, but internally, it's a large effect, right? Whereas extrinsic motivators are the opposite of that. They're like outward facing. So social recognition, awards, money, things like that. So typically, intrinsic motivators are significantly better than extrinsic motivators for keeping people accountable. Not always the case, but that's why typically things like, if you've seen like corporate wellness strategies where they say, like, oh, people that do, A, B, and C within a month will get like a $50 gift card at the end, right? That $50 gift card being an extrinsic motivator probably doesn't have that same weight as something like, being healthier so that you can extend your health span or your lifespan by 5 years, right? That's going to have a much larger intrinsic motivation. All right, so now we're going to go into some goal setting frameworks. I know there's a bit going on with this slide, so I'll try and walk you through it. But again, going back to those common frameworks, we have the SMART goals. They kind of then tie into your outcome and process goals, and then your short, mid, and long-term goals as well. So main thing we want to focus on first here is the difference between a process goal and an outcome goal. So outcome goals, that's pretty self-explanatory by the name. That focuses on the result or the outcome that you're trying to achieve, right? So it could be, as you can see in the examples, lose 30 pounds in 12 months, take 5 minutes off my 10-kilometer time trial time, or get better sleep, right? Or maybe instead of get better sleep, the outcome goal might be like have more energy or feel more rested, right? The process goal is the focus on repeated actions that are going to lead to achieving that outcome, right? So again, as you can see in the green, lose 30 pounds in 12 months. That's the outcome. The process is meal prep every Sunday and log my food in my food diary every day. right? So they're the actions that, if done repeatedly, are more than likely going to lead to that positive outcome. Same thing with that, take 5 minutes off my 10K time, right? Blocking off time in a calendar to get 3 runs in every week. That's going to help you achieve that result. And then again, feel more rested, get better sleep, whatever it is. The process goal or the actions that you'll take will be to turn off all electronics 30 minutes before your intended time to sleep. All right, so just some examples there of how you can fit that in. Now, we take that and then we can add that into the concept of short, mid, and long-term goals. So your long-term goal is more often than not going to be an outcome-based goal, right? That's why you can see it. It's there in green. It's lose 30 pounds or it's improve mobility and core strength. Like I was saying before as well, that that first slide, when you break down larger goals into smaller, more attainable goals, you have a 35% greater chance of achieving that long-term goal. So that's where the mid and the short-term goals come into it. So again, these midterm goals, they're the stepping stones. They generally will be weeks to months long. And they can be a combination of either smaller outcome goals or larger process goals, right? So again, going back to the examples there, the large long-term outcome goal is lose 30 pounds. So a more manageable one will be to lose 6 pounds in 3 months. Whereas with the long-term goal of improving mobility and core strength, the midterm goal might be to practice yoga for 20 minutes 3 times a week for a set period, right? So that's showing you that you can have a midterm goal that's both a process and an outcome goal. And then finally, we have that third one, which is going to be short-term goals. Now, these are going to be more of your smaller process-based goals. So they're going to be actionable steps. And typically when you set a short-term goal, it's for the duration of a few days to a few weeks. So again, going back to our long-term goal of losing 30 pounds, the short-term goal might be to buy your groceries on a Friday and meal prep on a Sunday. Because again, that process goal of meal prepping each day is going to give you a greater chance of achieving that long-term goal. And then going back to that other idea as well of the improving mobility, if that midterm goal is to practice yoga for 20 minutes 3 times a week, what the short-term goal might be is to set my yoga mat out each night before I plan to do it the next day so that it's visible, it's there, it's a nice reminder. And we'll kind of cover this a little bit more in a few more slides in regards to some habit creation. But just showing you there that when you set a long-term goal for a client, long-term goals are great and they're important, and they often allow you to like improve like retention and things like that too, right? If you only set like 8-week goals with your clients, when they get to the end of the 8 weeks, they might be like, cool, thanks, I've achieved my goal, I'm out of here. Not what you want. So that's why you want to set a long-term 12 to 24-month goal, right? But then break that down into smaller chunks. So again, it's beneficial for retention in the sense that it's helping them commit from the beginning. Hey, I'm in this for 12 months or 24 months with you. This is a partnership. It's not just a quick 6-week and then I'm out or whatever it might be. And then also, again, tying back to retention, setting those shorter and midterm goals as well. As long as there's like achieving those, or maybe they're not necessarily achieving their short-term goal every week, but you're sitting down, you're discussing, hey, where did things go wrong, where can we improve? You're creating that relationship, which is going to, one, show that you really care about them achieving their goals, which is going to be huge for retention. But then two, hopefully if they are ticking a lot of these goals off, it's building confidence, like we said before. It's celebrating those wins. And obviously if someone loses 30 pounds in 12 months or whatever it might be, that's amazing. That's a huge win to celebrate. But if somebody meal preps, every week for a month and they've never meal prepped before, that's also a giant win and something that should be celebrated, right? Or even the short-term goal. Did they go to the supermarket on Friday and, buy their food and make their meal prep? Yeah, great. Like celebrate that win until it becomes more consistent and a more regular thing. So just a few different ways there where it can also have a really positive impact on your retention overall. And obviously, if you can improve your retention, generally you're going to keep clients for longer. That's going to have better end results for metrics like revenue and things like that. All right. So now we're going to go dive into is the idea of forming habits or forming good habits and hopefully breaking bad ones. So again, a lot of New Year's resolutions or habits or goals in general, I should say, come down to habit building. Essentially, habits are the building blocks of goals. They're those short-term goals quite often, right? The more sustainable the habit, the more sustainable the result. So, some aspects of what the client's going to need to do to achieve a result might not necessarily be sustainable for the long term, but a lot of things that will be, right? So basically smaller, healthy life habits. Sorry, I can see there's a few questions coming through the chat. So I'm just going to pause real quick. Okay, looks like people are kind of answering their own questions in the chat. So that's all good. Okay, yeah, so diving back in, if you've read the book Atomic Habits, you'll probably be quite familiar with a lot of these concepts. If you haven't read the book of Atomic Habits, I definitely suggest grabbing it and reading it. It's really interesting. It provides a lot of the foundation of the behavioral psychology, but then it breaks it down into really easy to understand and actionable ways that you can implement those strategies too. So we're going to take a bit of a quick high level look at this. By no means have I managed to cover a full book in the next 3 or 4 slides. So like I said, definitely encourage you to jump in and have a read of it yourself. But we're just going to take a look at some of these overarching concepts to give you an idea of maybe how you can help clients either create new good habits or break some of those old bad ones. So there's 4 laws of habit creation, and then each of those has an inverse law for breaking a habit as well. So the first one is making it obvious, and then obviously the inverse is making it not obvious or invisible, making it attractive, making it unattractive, making it easy, making it difficult, making it satisfying, and making it unsatisfying. So we'll take a little bit of a look at each of these, and I'll provide you an example, starting with making it obvious. So essentially what you're doing is you're creating a clear cue to trigger a habit, right? So if the goal is to exercise each morning, then the trigger will be, okay, the night before, leave your gym clothes out next to the bed so that when you wake up, you immediately see your gym clothes. You think, oh, yeah, that's right. I've got to get changed. I've got to go for my morning walk or whatever it might be. Sorry. Oh, good. I just saw your question there, Matt. Just so you know, Matt, we will send out a copy of the slides and a recording of the presentation as well. So if you did miss anything, don't stress. You'll get a copy of all this after. And then obviously the inverse of that is to hide things that trigger a habit, right? So one I feel like we probably all relate with is the idea of we want better sleep, but we can't help doom scrolling on our phone for an hour and a half when we're going to bed and trying to be asleep, right? So in order to remove the trigger for that habit, the trigger being there's my phone, let me pick it up, leave the phone in the other room, right? So that way, and this kind of ties into one of the other ones that we'll cover in a minute too, but that way, if I'm going to jump on my phone, I've got to get out of bed, walk to the other room, pick up my phone, and then bring it back or whatever it might be, right? So it's not only making it invisible to avoid that trigger, but it's also making it difficult. And the concept of getting out of bed and walking to the other room to pick up a phone in theory doesn't sound that difficult, but trust me, like if you're warm and cozy in bed, particularly for us that are in the winter months right now, getting out of bed in the cold to go walk to the other room to pick up a phone is not that inviting of an idea, right? And then the application of how you might use Everfit for this is the use of reminder notifications for scheduled workouts or habits, right? So whether that is scheduling the habit, and again, if the habit is to walk every morning, right, then set the reminder and set the habit with a reminder at 8 p.m. to be like, hey, like, leave your workout clothes out or leave your walking shoes by the front door or something like that, right? So it's triggering that for them. So you become that trigger that makes it obvious to do. All right, so the next one we're going to look at is the concept of making it attractive versus making it unattractive, right? So essentially, if you're trying to form a new habit, particularly maybe something that's not the most enjoyable or attractive in its own right, such as exercising when people don't like to exercise, you want to pair that habit with something that they do enjoy to help make it more enjoyable or attractive, right? So the example is if they're going for a walk, Help them listen to their favorite podcast while they're walking, right? And they can only listen to that podcast while they're doing that specific task, whether it be walking, maybe it's they do it while they're meal prepping, whatever it might be, right? But creating something, or sorry, pairing with something they already do that they already enjoy will help increase that likelihood of them continuing to do so. Now, the inverse of this, of making it unattractive, is a little bit different in the sense that you have to sort of reframe the behavior to highlight the downside, right? So it's more so a mental thing about how you think about it and how you visualize it. And the example here is, if it gets to the end of the night and I eat that junk food, if I go and crush that pint of Ben and Jerry's in my freezer, right, I'm going to wake up feeling bloated or sluggish. It's going to like affect my morning routine in a negative way. Or another example of this might be, if I go and eat that pint of ice cream and consume those 800 calories, I'm going to undo all the good work I've just done today, right? So this one's a little bit more nuanced where, like I said, you have to try and reframe your thinking around it. Another kind of prime example of how you think about it is a more generalized one, but like smoking, for instance, right? So I'm not a smoker, but if you are a smoker or you have been a smoker, you might know that like the framing of smoking that cigarette, the idea of like, oh, this is a stress relief or this feels really good, is going to outweigh the idea of this is probably going to give me lung cancer, right? So trying to reframe that and put the idea of this is going to make me sick or increase my chances of getting a disease later in life, right? Put that at the forefront so that becomes the first thing you think about, not the afterthought. Hopefully that makes sense. Now, how can you incorporate this into your coaching or through Everfit? And the application there is to incorporate rewards. So again, going back to those progress charts, so metrics, if you've set habits and used those before, the habit adherence window, that's really awesome too. Like you can show, their percentages for the month, their streaks, things like that. So a little bit of that gamification of habits as well is going to be really important. Curtis, just saw your message. Yes, I would be definitely interested in this, and I'll follow up with you towards the end here. But yeah, okay, so jumping into the third one, which is making it easy or making it difficult. So again, I kind of already gave a bit of a brief example before about leaving the phone in the other room as an example of making it difficult. But essentially what we're either doing is trying to reduce the friction of a habit or increase the friction of a bad habit to stop it, right? So examples of reducing friction to make something easier is prepping meals in advance, right? We all know that if you meal prep in advance, it's going to make eating healthy throughout the week when you're busy much simpler, right? It's also going to avoid the temptation of going and buying lunch at work, when you might end up at McDonald's or somewhere you shouldn't in terms of healthy eating. Or again, it could be like I mentioned before, putting your shoes on. And this other example of making it easy is starting out with very simple, basic versions of the goal, right? So maybe the goal is I want to walk for 30 minutes each day. Like, yeah, great. How many times have you walked for 30 minutes in the last month? And like, oh, I haven't, right? Like, okay, so going from 0 to 100 might be more challenging. So what you're going to do is break it down and work on or focus on the habit itself rather than the outcome. So obviously the outcome is to improve your fitness by walking 30 minutes every day, and it's that 30-minute mark. But the habit that we want to focus on is I want to walk each day, right? So maybe it's just walking 5 minutes each day, right? Or maybe it's even easier than that, where like the habit starts of, oh, put your walking shoes on, right? Put them on. And maybe you don't even go outside and actually walk, but you put your walking shoes on. You do that for 3 days and you start to think, well, I'm putting my shoes on. I've already got them on. I may as well go outside, right? So now you're going outside and you're walking for 2 or 3 minutes. And then maybe you come back in and that's all it is. But you get used to that. And then a week later, walking for 3 minutes is like, well, I've walked for 3 minutes, why not 5? And then a couple of weeks later, I've been going for 5, why not 10, right? So it's about creating those building blocks, but it's more so focusing on the habit and the ritual of putting your walking shoes on, going outside, right? And then it kind of builds from there. Another thing that's not listed here, but is really important as well, and a great rule that they mention is never try to miss a habit twice in a row, right? So if your habit is to go to the gym each day, or a habit for me that I'm trying to do right now is I'm trying to stretch every day. If I miss it once, that's okay, but don't let it happen a second time, right? Because if you miss it once, that's an off chance. If you miss it twice, now I'm in a habit of missing it. So it's trying to limit the ability to change that habit and reverse it. So just kind of thinking about it. It's also a mental block of, okay, I'm allowed to miss it once and it's not going to break my habit. I can just pick it up the next day, as opposed to, well, I didn't make it to the gym today, so, the last 3 weeks of going to the gym are ruined and I may as well not finish the program, right? That's the wrong method of thinking. So again, it's just about reshaping the way you think about it. And then obviously the inverse, like I mentioned before, is adding friction to make something harder. So again, if it's to try and avoid eating junk food, one, don't keep junk food in the house, right? That means if I want to go get junk food, I've got to get in the car, drive to the supermarket, buy it. Again, that's a lot of effort. I'm probably going to be like, you know what? I'll just not eat it today. The other one might be to delete food delivery apps off your phone, right? So that way, if I really, really want to order something from Uber Eats or DoorDash or one of those, I've got to download the app again, set it up, order my food, and then get it and then delete the app. So again, I'm probably going to be less likely to order that food unless I'm really in a pinch, because I don't want to go to the effort of having to re-download the app, set up my account, and so forth. Now, again, the application here for making things easier, obviously there's a lot of different applications, but within Everfit, using autoflows to automate tasks and reminders, things like scheduling habit check-ins or scheduling messages, things like that. That's where this automation can be really powerful, because it doesn't necessarily add a lot of effort or load to you as the coach. It's just going to kind of happen in the background. All right, and so the last one that we're going to talk about is is making it satisfying or making it unsatisfying, right? So the concept of making it satisfying is to give yourself an immediate reward, or maybe not necessarily immediately, but giving yourself a reward, but making sure that that reward does not reverse the work done from the habit, right? So if the habit is to do 45 minutes of cardio and burn 300 calories, and then the reward is to go and eat a donut, which is 300 calories, right? That's not really a useful reward. What is a useful reward could be something like in that example there. If you get all of your workouts done in the month, you get to book in and get a massage, right? So the massage is going to help those aching muscles, particularly if you're in a strength program or you're doing a lot of heavy volume. It's also going to be potentially relaxing, depending on what type of massage, all that sort of stuff. But giving that concept of like, this is actually a reward that both one is something I want and is attractive and is satisfying, but it's also contributing to my overall goals in some way. It doesn't have to be a large way, but like I said, if it's a massage, maybe it's just easing a bit of soreness. Or maybe it's helping me feel a little bit more relaxed, which means I might get some better sleep that night or something like that, right? So just trying to find those. And as a role as you as the coach here is also going to have to help the client understand what are some good rewards for certain actions, and maybe what are some rewards that and having negative effects that we want to avoid, right? So helping them understand that process. And then in the inverse of that, of creating negative consequences, or removing any sense of a reward for a bad habit, say they skip a workout, and maybe that's a really easy thing to do. But then if the consequence of skipping a workout is they have to send you a video message in Everfit and say, hey, Rob, I missed my workout because of X, Y, and Z, right? One, at least for a lot of people I know, sending a video message is not something that people like to do. And then two, oftentimes, if the reason for skipping the workout is quite basic, like I just didn't want to do it, that's kind of a difficult thing to have to admit to somebody, particularly on camera. So hopefully that negative thought of I really don't want to record this message and tell Rob my not very strong excuse as to why I skipped my workout, that's going to be a strong enough motivator that hopefully that they won't skip the workout, right? Now, obviously, there's a lot of different things you can come up with, but that's just an idea to give you, that's an example to give you an idea of the concept there. Now, the application within Everfit, again, is to track and celebrate that client progress. So again, whether it's showing progress with metrics, but they're not just showing it, but really celebrating them within, I don't know how you might interact with your clients, but if you typically only respond with voice messages, maybe you send them a video that takes you 30 seconds to quickly post and be like, amazing job, so proud of you, whatever it might be, right? Or maybe it's you get to jump on a check-in call and you really hype them up, or maybe it's just, I don't know, sending something as simple as like a clapping GIF or something, something that's a little bit out of the ordinary for the way you typically communicate is going to really drive that sense of like, oh, wow, like normally I just get, a text message or an emoji, but now I've got a video message or a voice recording message. I must have done something good to generate a little bit of extra effort from my coach, right? So just some different ideas around that. Cool. So that kind of wraps up the presentation. Well, appreciate you all joining me today. Hopefully you took some good nuggets of information away with this. And I'll see you guys next week if you're at the new feature webinar.